Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from YellowCat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What is your But I Am the Manager story part 3? I work as a clerk in a county government office. One day my manager went ahead and asked me to collect all of the extra recycling paper around the copiers and dump them in the locked recycling bins around the floor. He said that he was going to let my supervisor know that I was doing this task for him. About halfway into it, my supervisor comes back from her meeting and notices that I am not at my desk doing my assigned work. She came up to me and started asking me what the H I was doing. I told her the manager asked me to empty the recycling. She immediately flipped out and yelled at me in front of the entire floor of about 40 people. I don't care if he told you, I am your supervisor. You get back to your desk now! And proceeded to slam the door to her dark office/cave after she saw me sit back down at my desk. I immediately knocked on my manager's door and informed him. I went back to my desk and she opened the door to her office. The manager stepped outside his door and yelled to my supervisor in a stern voice, "My office, now!" After several minutes, I got a call on my desk phone from him and asked me to come into his office. Almost immediately, my supervisor apologizes to me for embarrassing me in front of my peers. He then told the supervisor that while she is my supervisor, I am your manager, your boss. If you want to discipline volunteer, you do it in your own office with the door shut. That is what an office is for, privacy. My manager then told me to go finish the task he had asked me to do and told my supervisor to get back to work. Near the end of my time at Boston Market, and I'm pretty checked out, some woman, on her phone no less, kept asking me if we sell soup. I kept repeating yes while trying to service the regulars. She asks where they were and what kind, so I say, "See that sign where it says soups?" Then she demands to speak to someone in charge. I walk out back, return, and ask what the issue was. I witnessed an awesome one. One of the cashiers was pushing cards of returns to their aisles when she overheard a customer loudly saying derogatory words ranging from average curse words to ones about certain races. She politely asked them to stop. Then they start screaming at her for no reason, saying that this isn't her store and that they can do what they want. The whole freedom of speech crap. What the guy didn't notice was that the main manager of the night was right behind him. The customer turned around to see a 6-foot ex-Marine forcefully say that it may not be her store, but this is my store and you need to leave now. Needless to say, the customer sprinted out the store. I had started a computer science club at the community college I went to before transferring. I had been asking around for permission to get supplies from the IT for various projects. I go the guy that typically help people in the computer lab and go, "Hey, I'm here for the computer science club." And he cuts me off and points at the sign I put up right outside the lab the day before. The sign-up sheet's outside the door. It's run by a student, not the department. I wave and go, "Hi, I'm the student running it. I wanted a monitor and stuff for a Raspberry Pi." And, conclusion, he was like, "Oh, well, write a ticket. We can't just give you hardware." So I used to work at a huge chain tool store. A month after I started, I was promoted to a key holder, and 2 months after, I was made a supervisor. This made me in charge when it was the manager's day off. At the time, I was a 155 centimeter, 40 kilogram female that looked about 12. A lot of people in the building industry are very rude and don't like the opinion of females. My father is a builder, so I had basic knowledge of how everything works, and I'm good at helping customers find what they need. One day, a gentleman spoke to my colleague, a clueless 18-year-old male, about getting guttering for his house. Gutters are the pipes that go around the edge of your roof and transport rainwater. My colleague didn't really know how to help him, so he asked me to help. The customer, a 50-year-old grumpy male, gave me one look and immediately asked if he could speak to someone else. I shrugged and got another colleague. He helped the man find the right items, and the man suddenly brings out blueprints of his house and asks my colleague to help him calculate how much gutter pipes he needed. My colleague was about 30 and not the brightest bulb. I left them to it and went to help another customer. The customer I went to was a regular and immediately started praising me about how he was sure I could help him find a replacement for some tiny weird bolt for his sink. After a few minutes of looking through some boxes, we found the right one and he continued to praise me, even going so far to tell the other customer how brilliant I was. The other customer immediately got annoyed. Apparently, he couldn't tolerate a girl knowing anything about his profession. He immediately asked my colleague to speak to whoever was in charge because they weren't getting anywhere. My colleague stared at me. After finishing with my own customer, I went back to Mr. Grumpy Pants. "How can I help, sir?" He paled a bit and obviously realized the situation. He then asked if I'd be so kind to help him work out how much pipe he needed. Much to the relief of my colleague, I took over, and after 20 minutes with a ruler and a calculator, we had the back of his van loaded with pipes, and off he went. My colleagues were impressed with my ability to handle the customer, but what shocked us all the most was not 5 minutes later, the man returned with a box of ice creams for all of us to share. It was the middle of summer, and the warehouse we worked in was sweltering. To make things even better, a week later he came back in for some other items and told us how he had ended up with the perfect amount of gutter and apologized to me. It's situations like that that made me really enjoy retail, and sometimes I even miss it. Working the night shift at a small seafood restaurant. There was just 2 of us, and I was the manager. For reference, I'm only 18, so it catches people off guard. I was cooking an order for some lady who walked in when she started questioning why I was qualified to be cooking her food. I am trained and certified, so I was not happy. She started to demand to speak to the manager, so I came out and told her I was. All the color drained from her face, and she quietly sat down until her food was done. I was the foreman for an asbestos abatement company. Basically, the guy that demolish anything made of hazardous material. Anyway, we get this massive job, doing a whole skyscraper downtown, so we hire 40 new guys. And instead of mixing old and new guys so things run smooth, they lump me in with all 40 of the new guys. Well, first day there, and I'm doing my job, giving orders and telling people proper safety protocols and blah blah. Then I go into this back room where about 12 guys are taking out fluorescent lights, mercury, and PCBs, and this guy is standing on rolling scaffold without rails, pulling himself from light to light. He is 6 feet in the air without handrails, using a scaffold as a skateboard. Big no-no. So I tell him, "Get down between lights, you'll get a fine for that, and OHS is here today." He ignores me. I figure, whatever, I'll write him up later. So I keep going in that room because they were doing everything wrong. All new guys, remember? Until finally, the owner and supervisor come through and see 2 guys doing nothing and chatting. Supervisor's peed, so yells, "Stop talking about jaying each other off and get to work!" Everyone turns to look and is like, F. I giggle. This guy that was chatting happens to be Scaffold's skateboard guy. He, in his infinite wisdom, decides to turn to our 6'8" supervisor and from his dumb effing mouth says, "Well, that kid is just telling everyone what to do like he's the boss and he's doing nothing," while pointing at me. At this point, I realize they weren't in the meeting this morning. They have no idea who I am. The supervisor and the owner both point at me and say, "Him? He is your effing boss." Everyone in the room turns to look at me with a look of sheer and utter shock. I laughed about it for weeks. One of the guys who was a D-head and wouldn't listen to me earlier ended up becoming a great friend to this day. I was 17. I started there right out of high school and got promoted to foreman after 6 months. I'm the head lifeguard of a beach, and we don't allow boats to dock or drop anchor within 100 feet of our swim area and beach. It's partially a safety thing because boats can drift, and if people are fishing, the hooks could come into the swim area. Never a good time. It's also because the sheriff needs to have full access to the beach, which is made more difficult on days when boats surround the beach. One day, a family comes to dock right off the beach, right alongside the buoys and lining that separates the swim area from the lake. I had just gotten off the lifeguard stand, so I immediately walked over to explain to them that they needed to move their boat. The mother starts swearing at me, telling me that her husband was the president of the homeowner association for the neighborhood across the lake. Just as a side note, the other side of the lake is another city, but the whole lake is owned by the city I worked for. I told her that it didn't matter who they were, it was a city ordinance and county ordinance that they couldn't be so close. The dad begins to threaten me. I immediately radioed to a coworker to call the police, and the mother demands to speak to the manager because she is going to get me fired. I very calmly informed her that I was the manager of the beach and the entire park that spread out behind the beach, and I was the one who made the ultimate decision in any dispute. The mother was so incensed by this that she jumped out of the boat, which was trespassing because you have to pay to enter the beach and park, and got in my face to start threatening me and pushing me. Luckily, the police station was fairly close to the park, so as she was doing this, the police pulled up into the parking lot. My coworker and several patrons had begun to record all of this as well. One of the children on the boat noticed that the police were walking towards us, and she started crying that she didn't want to go to jail. I informed the woman that she was trespassing and that if she continued to yell at me, I would press charges for assault. She booked it back into the boat and they took off, but the police had gotten the serial number of the boat. I think they brought charges of trespassing, assault, threatening a city worker, and resisting arrest against the mother and father. Helped to open a new restaurant and started out as a grill cook. Fast forward 3 months later, the assistant general manager resigns and they offer me the position. Since I came up through the ranks with everyone I worked with, I was a pretty laid-back manager and the employees and I had a mutual respect. Anytime something needed to be done, I would hop onto the grill, grab a drink order, help hostesses, or clean up here and there. One night near closing time, the old manager comes in. No problem, chat for a bit, some of the staff chats for a bit, and everyone generally goes on their way and gets their closing routine finished up. I go to office to start working on my paperwork and cashing out the wait staff, come back out an hour later after closing, expecting to be ready for final walkthrough, and I find out that the grill is still on. A lot of places, this wouldn't be too big a deal, but we're a Mongolian barbecue. Our grill is a 6-foot diameter steel circle that takes 30 minutes to cool down before you can clean it. I start looking around for my grill cook, the only one left, and find him on the patio smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer. Me: Joe, why haven't you started cleaning the grill? We closed an hour ago. Joe: I'll do it when I finish my beer. Me: no, go do it now. Everyone else is done, and now we're stuck here until you get it cleaned up. Joe: F you, B, I'll do it when I finish my beer. Me: not gonna work. Either you put the beer down and clean the grill, or put the beer down and go home. I'll have Big Boss call you tomorrow to see if you still have a job. Joe: whatever, you can't fire me. Me: walks over, takes beer, dumps it out. I'm your manager, and I promise that I can in fact fire you. Have a good night, Joe. Go home. Walk inside, lock door to patio, and proceed to clean grill. Called the GM the next day to let him know what happened, and he backed me entirely. I think he even tried to come into work that night, and Big Boss had him escorted off the property. If you want to watch the part 2, click the link here. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.